Nissa, Vastwood Seer versus Muldrotha the Gravetide. A revisit to Nissa. That is an awful hand, isn't it? And I'm going to keep it. Because the more lands we have, the less likely we are to draw into lands. And we can get the Dryad Arbor out on turn 1. Which means that we can get into Nissa on turn 2. And we've got a couple of draws between them. Which hopefully will get us into something completely different. Nissa, Vastwood Seer tutors for a forest when she enters, a basic forest, and then when a land comes into play she flips into a planeswalker if you control 7 or more lands, and you get some kind of card advantage, weird card advantage, and an elemental, a 4/4 elemental for minusing her down. We've already gotten into something else that we can cast, and that will get us closer to Nissa's flipping over, because Sakura Tribalder is ramp. And also, because we've got a couple of creatures in play, the Gaia's Cradle is switched on, so even if we get into something big next turn, we could still go for Gaia's Cradle, or keep the Sakura Tribalder around to have more mana from the Cradle. Let's get that down. We'll get the Tribalder down. And then tap the Cradle for 3 for the Cultivate. Cradle taps for green per creature we control. Cultivate will search for a couple of basics. One into play, one into hand. And how many lands are we away from here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're at 5 lands. 6 if we crack the Tribalder, so we can flip Nissa next turn, which will be our turn 4, which is pretty damn good, I think. Muldrotha the Gravetide is a 6-mana Sultai commander, a 6/6. During each of your turns you may play up to 1 permanent of each permanent type from your graveyard. Alright, a Nevermaker, and that is being evoked. When it leaves the battlefield, put a non-land permanent on top of its owner's library. So that might be Nissa, Vastwood Seer they're going for. I actually don't care about that. We can replay Nissa. I assume they're targeting Nissa. Nissa is exactly who they're going for. And like I say, that's no problem. Instead of putting her onto the library and messing up our draw, I'll just put her back into the command zone. We can recast her next turn and still flip her over. Crack the Tribalder at the end of the turn. And yeah, Reclamation Sage is good. That will get rid of that Dimir Signet. Let's get the Ancient Tomb down and replay Nissa. And just decided to wait on flipping her over because I think killing off this Signet might be an excuse for our opponent to concede, especially if there's a Planeswalker on the field as well that they can't do anything about. But they haven't conceded immediately, so perhaps shouldn't have shown mercy on our opponent by not flipping over the Nissa this turn, as was initially intended. It's a shame that you do have to play around your opponent's potentially scooping. That is absolutely something that you have to play around in Magic Online, unfortunately. A Solemn Simulacrum will replace the mana that they lost from the Signet. But luckily for us, they are still a mana away from their commander. A Terastodon, well that's something that we could cast. Let's flip Nissa around and see if we can draw into anything else. Reveal the top card of our library. Lands go into play, and that was a land, was it? Oh, Cavern of Souls. We'll just name Elf with Cavern of Souls. Yeah, so we flipped into a land, it went straight onto the field of play. If it wasn't a land, it would have just gone into our hand. Alright, let's blow up some of our own lands just for the fun of it here. Our opponent should wait and see what we target here before they scoop, but they may not. Well, it looks like they are. Let's go for a land. Another forest, and we'll get rid of the Underground Sea of our opponents. So we get a couple of elephants to our opponent's 1. And we won't bother swinging in, they'll just kill it off with the elephant. They would have been on Muldrotha mana this turn had we not have blown up the land, which is exactly why we did that. Ravenous Chupacabra probably takes down the Terastodon. Oh, a Surak could have done with that last turn. That can give our creatures haste. Let's draw with Nissa before we decide what we want to do. A Scavenging Ooze, I mean, it doesn't get much better than that against Muldrotha, does it? So let's play Surak. That is a 5/4, and if the total power of creatures we control is 8 or more, then we can give a creature haste at the beginning of combat. Let's get down the Scavenging Ooze, and if they're going to scoop to anything, it's probably that. We'll wait and see what our opponent does, but I imagine they're going to have a tough time against the Ooze. Surak will give itself haste, and we'll swing in here. If they want to block with Solemn, they can. I do not mind exiling a Solemn, or I can exile the Chupacabra and the Solemn as well. Yeah, that's okay. Draw a card from Solemn Simulacrum. And I have to imagine everyone knows about Scavenging Ooze, but for a green we can exile a card from a graveyard. If it's a creature, it gets a plus counter and we gain a life. And yeah, this card is a graveyard player's worst nightmare. Even if they cast Muldrotha here, we will just respond by exiling 6 cards from our opponent's graveyard. I don't know if there's a split-second kill card actually. If there is, it's not one that's usually played in Commander. Okay, Intuition. Let's see what they're going to try and trick us into giving them here. Intuition, our opponent searches for 3 cards. We choose one of them and put it into our opponent's hand, the rest go into the graveyard. Particularly good in lands matter decks, because you can often just play lands straight from your graveyard, so it doesn't actually matter what your opponents put in the bin. Now then, let's see what they're after here. They can have an Ancient Tomb, I think. Yeah, we can exile the Seal of Doom, we can exile Life from the Loam. We choose a card. The chosen card will be put into their hand. You can have the Ancient Tomb. Secrets of the Dead. Whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, you draw a card. Very good in a Muldrotha deck. Unfortunately for our opponent, the Scavenging Ooze is really going to make light work of their graveyard. Let's tap down all of our mana and start cherry picking from the graveyard. We'll get rid of the Intuition first. And the Ravenous Chupacabra. The Solemn. The Seal of Doom. The Life from the Loam. Nevermaker. And the Misty Rainforest. And then we can get rid of the other 2 on our turn if we want to. Okay, Worldly Tutor. Let's go for that now because we can get into it off of Nissa. Let's go for the Regal Force because that can refill our hand, and then we'll draw into it with Nissa. And when Regal Force enters, we'll draw cards equal to the number of green creatures we control, which is 6 currently. Alright, and then I think it's Emerald Medallion. I might as well get down the tap land. That's a hideaway card, so we'll get to cherry pick something here. Soul of the Harvest, I think, is our best bet. That's more card draw for us. Then we'll get down the Yavimaya Elder. And we've got 1 mana held up for that Dimir Signet if they decide they want to try and cast that next turn. Let's go in with everything at our opponent. Apart from the Rex Sage, that can be a blocker. Our opponent playing through this, which is very admirable. A Noxious Gearhulk, probably aimed at Skoos. And it definitely is, so let's just get rid of that Dimir's Signet. Because Dimir's Signet will trigger the Secrets of the Dead. It will count as casting, which will therefore draw them a card. They're going to gain 5 life here because the toughness of Scavenging Ooze is 5. Now we can pull things out of the graveyard in this green deck, but it all relies on whether or not we draw into them. I think it's Woodfall Primus, maybe. Let's plus with Nissa again. Oh, Bramble Sovereign. Yeah, that's interesting. Let's get down a land. And then, yeah, Guy's Cradle taps for 6. Let's just get down the Soul of the Harvest. We can easily get that out with Mosswalk Bridge because we have total power of 10 or greater on the board. Then 3 mana for Bramble Sovereign. And we'll draw a card because a non-token creature entered. The Great Aurora, don't really care about getting that out, so let's just go straight in for the Woodfall Primus. And we will be able to get a token copy of this from the Bramble Sovereign. When Woodfall Primus enters, we can destroy a non-creature permanent. Let's get rid of that Ancient Tomb. And then we are going to pay into the Bramble Sovereign. So that will get us another trigger and we'll get rid of the Secrets of the Dead. Don't want to mess around with our opponent's mana any more than we already have. And we actually can't afford much else now, so let's just hold up the Avimaya Elder. We'll swing in with these Elephant tokens and the Regal Force. And the Rex Sage as well. Rex Sage will be able to squeeze through a little bit more damage, or it will distract them into a block. Yep, so because the Reclamation Sage swung in, it distracted the Elephant, and we got more damage through here because of that. Yeah, we'll just leave it there. We can crack the Avimaya Elder whenever we want. Now, I never used the Limit Break on Nissa, but maybe a good finisher next turn. -7, untap up to 6 target lands. They become 6/6 elementals. Okay, Hedron Crab is too late, I think. We will not give our opponent a copy of the Hedron Crab. They would actually make use of that. That has landfall. Target player mills 3. And they have made a land. As usual, the Reanimator self-mill player has targeted themselves. They get into E-Witness, Playcrafter, and Sidisi's Faithful. Don't think we are going to see our opponent's commander though, unfortunately. And even if we do, it's not likely they'll be able to afford to cast anything here. The Noxious Gearhulk is coming in at us. So we will just block with the Yavimaya Elder and the token copy of Woodfall Primus. That has Menace, so we have to double block on that. And then in response to the blocks, we will crack the Yavimaya Elder. That will get us into a couple of basics and it will draw us a card. And we just draw into a land anyway. Managed to kill off the Noxious Gearhulk. I think our opponent's just kind of playing around with us now at this point. Unless they have some kind of living death of some kind. Unless maybe they have living death. No, it's a Victimize they were after. Don't know what they sacrificed there, or what they've chosen. Oh, they went for the Hedron Crab sacrificed and then brought back the Noxious Gearhulk and the Eternal Witness. Unfortunately, it doesn't really matter what they go for here. I think we can go wide on our opponent either way. Victimize does bring the creatures in tapped. But even if they wipe the board with something like a Living Death there, we could still get a load of elementals animated from our lands and turn those sideways. Noxious Gearhulk is killing off the Soul of the Harvest. So that's less card draw for us. Definitely not going to give our opponent any tokens. The Eternal Witness is bringing the Victimize back. I don't know if our opponent's made a land drop already. They might be able to Victimize again here. Although there's not much for them to go for, really. Okay, there's a Lignify. Let me just double check that we can get through here. That would be... Oh, actually, what's our opponent going to do with 2 mana? Let's just minus down Nissa. What just happened there? Untap up to 6 lands, they become 6/6 elemental creatures that are still lands. They don't look like... Well, let's go to combat and see if we're allowed to swing in with them. Oh, it didn't animate them. How strange, that's a report I'll have to jot down and send over to Wizards. But I think we win either way. Yeah, that's quite annoying because that could have been a game-winning turn there. That could have lost us the game. So I'll have to report that. But anyway, it was a good game to our opponent. They stuck through that. And it's always worth singing the praises of someone who sticks through it until the bitter end. We were looking pretty convincing from the offset there. We kept a handful of lands, but managed to draw into some other stuff, which is par for the course in this deck, to be honest. You don't mind recasting Nissa over and over again, because worst case scenario, she just gets you a land. And once you've got enough lands, she actually gives you a means of flipping her over all by herself, which is why she's so good. And then she gives you card advantage. So, yeah, don't mind keeping a handful of lands. And it worked out well for us this game. Hopefully you all enjoyed it as well. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.